Jane, are we live? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet at Portsmouth City Council. Sorry, we've all been in another meeting, so we're just coming over. First thing in terms of housekeeping, if there's a fire alarm, it's real, so please meet by Queen Victoria. Secondly, this is live streamed, so members of the public, Jerry, you will be on it. Yes. Let's just quickly run round the room so that people can introduce themselves, so that people watching have an idea of who everybody is. Shall we? Lynn, do you want to start at your end?
Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation.
Matthew Winton, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Social Care.
Darren Sanders, Cabinet Member for Housing.
Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Education.
Dave Ashmore, Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change.
Rob Wood, Cabinet Member for Children and Families.
Jonathan Jackson, Leader of the Council. Steve?
Sorry, Councillor Steve Pitt, Deputy Leader of the Council, Cabinet Member for Culture and City Development.
Jane Dodino, Local Democracy Officer.
Peter Bell, City Solicitor.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
David Williams, Chief Executive.
Guy Mason, Portsmouth City Council, Coastal and Drainage.
Okay, folks, so we've got apologies from Jeanette Smith and from Lee Hunt. And Jeanette's away and Lee is not well. Anybody else? No? Any declarations of interest, colleagues? Nope. Okay. Minutes of previous meetings on the 11th and 17th. Colleagues, are you okay with these minutes? Yep. Okay. Thanks very much indeed. Let's quickly then run through where we are with through these reports. Item 4 is the Conservative group didn't manage to get in any nominations to go onto outside bodies for the last meeting, but they have provided some here. So can I just run through? So the first is the Elementary Education Act Trust Board, and it's that they would like Terry Norton and Matthew Atkins to go on, which would mean increasing the group till 5. Colleagues, would you be happy with that? Susie, is that all right with you as Cabinet Member for Education? Yeah, okay. Everything else is, I think, just filling in gaps where there were vacancies. So I was just going to take them all. Colleagues, are you happy with all those nominations? Thanks very much indeed. Okay, item 5, City of Sanctuary. Karen, hello, welcome. Do you want to quickly say who you are and then introduce it, and then I know Steve has got a proposal.
Unit, and I'm here to bring back the paper for City of Sanctuary. City of Sanctuary is an umbrella movement which encompasses a range of issues that we understand can put people at disadvantage of social isolation, and it's about saying that we as a city are welcoming. It has its origins primarily in working with asylum seeking and refugees, and has been building momentum throughout the country. Here in Portsmouth, we've made that a broader remit. It also now encompasses homelessness, veterans, and domestic abuse. Oh, and hate crime.
Thank you very much indeed, Steve.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline, for the work that you've undertaken on this. My suggestion in terms of the recommendations is that we slightly amend this. I've had discussions with the team over at the Hive, and we are particularly keen as an administration to see the voluntary and community sector embedded in the work that we do. So I propose that we make the Hive the strategic lead on this, that they will work with Caroline at PCC, that the £16,000 that's identified in order to fund the work is allocated accordingly. That should leave the Hive will not require any payment for their element of the work, and that should leave some money afterwards in case there's any additional cost towards implementation, which means it's fully funded.
Okay. Okay, colleagues, are you happy with this? And I think it was a very good launch here in this building and got big public support. So thank you very much indeed for everybody for working so hard on this. And I think in terms of the future, this sits with the resources portfolio, so with Jeanette. Okay, colleagues, happy with that? Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Caroline.
And thank you, Karen. South Sea Coastal Scheme, Guy.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is a continuation of the progress on the South Sea Coastal Scheme, and it's seeking approval from Cabinet for the authority to be delegated to the Director of Regeneration to award the construction contract for South Sea. This is a limited construction contract at the moment, which is obviously subject to full funding, and will enable the designer to work with an appointed contractor to look at efficiencies on the scheme prior to submission of the full business case in October.
Okay. But can I just ask, is that separate from this? Jane, I'm very conscious there are no councillors from any of the other parties here. Were we informed that anybody was coming or had an interest in anything? No.
No, we haven't been notified of any interest.
Okay. All right, sorry. Okay, thanks very much indeed. Okay, David, as you're in charge of this?
As I'm in charge. No, I just want to say I think it makes sense, as Guy said, it's just a continuation of the progress. I just want to say thanks for the team you've got there. You've seen the consultations that have gone out. They've proved on the sea defences there. They've proved popular. We've seen from the initial designs there ideas that have been enhanced and refined through. They've been working through with the public and working through with members across party. So I think this is the next logical step. I'm absolutely happy with this. Thank you.
Okay, and when Zane came to speak at the East South Sea Neighbourhood Forum last week, he got a very positive response there. So thank you very much indeed for that. That was good. Okay, colleagues, you happy with this? Yep. Okay. Merger of coroners areas. Peter.
Yes, this is a report put forward by Stephen Bain and myself relevant to the merger of coroners areas in Hampshire. There are 3 retirements: the Chief Coroner in Winchester, our current coroner, and the East Hants coroner, all retiring this year. Now, part of the statutory obligation from the Chief Coroner is to consider merging colonial areas. The report brings forward 2 models, essentially merging...
Colonial areas?
Coronial. Yeah, that's a nice sort of archaic word for you there, Gerald. I can do a bit of Latin for you in a minute.
We look to you for archaic stuff.
Thank you, Gerald. So the 2 models you've got are either essentially merge our coroner with Hampshire as a pan-Hampshire model, or with the Isle of Wight. You'll see in the report the savings are 25,000 essentially for a Hampshire model and 15,000 for an Isle of Wight model. They're the 2 matters for you to consider today. There are tangible savings also in the fact that we wouldn't have to have 3 senior coroners at the rate. We'd have 1 senior coroner for the county and 2 area coroners at a considerable savings to everybody. There you go, John. Any questions?
Should we ask the Director of Finance for the Isle of Wight whether he can do an equal offer with the Hampshire model?
No comment.
For people who don't know, Chris White, who's our Director of Finance, is also... Chris Ward. Chris Ward, who is our Chief Finance Officer or Director of Finance, is also the Director of Finance for Gosport and the Isle of Wight, and I think the LEP as well. It seems to be sensible that we go with the Hampshire offer. But I think the important bit of this is that it's the needs of the families of people who died have to be at the centre of this, I think we've had the reassurance that would be so, and therefore it seems safe to be able to take the Hampshire route. Okay, colleagues, are you all right with this? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. Youth Offending Strategic Youth Justice Plan. Lisa, hello, good morning. Afternoon. I've no idea how you make that work. Well, if they don't work, they won't work, but such is life.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks. Lisa, do you want to just walk us through this quickly?
Yeah, so I'm Lisa Morgan, the service leader for the youth offending team in Portsmouth. It's a requirement on every youth offending team in England and Wales to produce an annual plan. That has been submitted to you today for approval. It has been already approved by the Youth Justice Partnership Board that meet on a quarterly basis, and an initial review has been done by our Youth Justice Board rep, who is happy with the content. The idea being that we will formally submit to him after we've gone through council approval processes.
Okay, Rob?
Lisa, this is a very comprehensive and well laid out report and plan. I'm very happy with it. Obviously, this year is about embedding everything we've learned with the data collection, with the improvement. So I'm happy to recommend it to Cabinet, and thank you, Lisa.
Colleagues, I think our job here is just to send this on formally to the council meeting next week for full council to consider. Are you happy to send it on to the full council for their consideration? Okay, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Ackwind, the joy of Ackwind, Paddy.
Thank you. So this report's around the Ackwind Interconnector project. Just one thing just to emphasise, in the agenda you've got, it's actually missing off the fifth recommendation from the report. So there is a fifth recommendation in the report that's not covered on the agenda, which in essence is saying that any external costs incurred in the current financial year for the council to make an informed and considered response to the proposal will need to be met from the council's corporate contingency. So just so you're aware of that.
And has the Director of Finance signed that off?
I believe he has. I believe those are his words. So the other thing just to stress is that this is a development consent order process, so it's not a decision of the City Council through its normal planning processes. We're a consultee to this proposal. What we're suggesting is that something's taken to the full council just to check whether people confirm that that is the view that we should object to the route of Ackwind. They're proposing that the cable comes in at Eastney all the way up through Portsmouth. They are trying to minimise the disruption as much as possible by taking it off the road network, but they will be laying two separate cables 2 metres apart as part of this process. So it's there's potential for quite a lot of disruption during this process.
Okay, people have asked me if this is a cable coming under the sea and it arrives at Portsea Island, why it can't keep on going under the sea up to Langston Harbour, through Langston Harbour. My understanding is that that's not allowed because it's Langston Harbour is an SSSI, and therefore that wouldn't be good for that potentially is not good for the worms.
So yes, I think planning colleagues have certainly said that actually that would be the the final. If all other options don't work, that's where they'd have to go, but you wouldn't get permission for that otherwise.
And the original proposal is to go up the Eastern Road, which we know will take out lanes and cause traffic chaos for yonks, and therefore trying to find an alternative route if this is imposed upon us is sensible. But I think the council's position is that that this is not something that is needed. There are other ways of doing this in other places. It's much less environmentally dangerous and much less inconvenient to residents, and therefore we should not be supporting this. I'm deeply disappointed that the government has decided that this is not an issue to be decided by Portsmouth people, but he's going to decide what is right for people and impose that on them. I think that's completely wrong. There is always the power, if you're going through a local plan, to appeal to the Secretary of State, so there is always the ability for somebody to appeal, but I don't understand why this is different from any other planning thing that we're going through. We're rebuilding the sea defences in South Sea. That's an enormous project, and yet we're allowed to make that decision here locally. Putting in this electric cable through the city is a smaller engineering feat, and we should have decided, along with all the other councils, on its route. So I'm happy to suggest that we do oppose it, as in the recommendations. Darren and Lynn, as this is going to go through your ward, as it goes through mine.
Quite. I support the 5 recommendations, and I support your comments, Gerald. This project is an answer in search of a question. No one can explain to me why this is needed, not least the people behind the project, except to make money for the private company, and that's fine. But we've got an air pollution crisis and we have a climate emergency, and the people behind this project cannot tell me if this will make either of those worse. And that is really, really worrying. The environmental impact in North Milton will be significant, and for a project that has no purpose except to make money. The other aspect of it that concerns me is in paragraph 5.3 of the report, which is around Aquin potentially using compulsory purchase order powers to buy what's euphemistically described as land in which the council has an interest, or as I know it, Milton Common, because that's frankly where it's going to be. And I'm deeply concerned that this project, for which there is no need, will demolish and buy back and use green space, which we need, for its own ends. I would love this project to be decided locally, because that's where it should be. I remain completely bemused as to why this project is going ahead except to make money for the developers, and I'm deeply worried that this will mean the loss of protected open and green space. And on those grounds I would support the 5 recommendations in the report, Paddy, and hope we can try and stop this.
Thanks. Lynn?
Milton Common, as everybody knows, is a former landfill site, so it may contain carcinogenic material, lots of other stuff. So if, when they do an environmental search, it is not possible to run this cable along Milton and in Milton Common, the only alternative is Eastern Road, one of the only 3 roads on and off the island. We've already got a massive air pollution problem. That will just cause, if you take out a lane, it's going to cause congestion, further air pollution. It's just utter madness. So
I don't think it's one lane.
Well, yes, but I'm just saying, even if you take out one, because I mean, let's face it, there's 2 lanes coming south until they merge into one.
Yeah, but if it's, to do this, I think you have to take out 2 lanes while they're constructing it, which would cause absolute nightmare.
Absolute, and with the air pollution problem, as Darren has already said, you know, it's just absolutely ludicrous. Yeah, well, just to line somebody's pockets.
Yeah, and we hope that the MP for Portsmouth North will support us in this.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Matthew.
Thank you, Gerald. As a councillor for the ward where this cable will be landing, one of the issues is, of course, we don't know where in Eastie this cable will be landing, because we still don't know, after all this time, exactly where they want it to come ashore. So that still leaves a lot of people in Eastney not having any idea exactly what the route of this cable will be, what impact it's going to have on their lives. And indeed, we are, as others have mentioned further up the case, down in Eastney as well, we're in a somewhat invidious situation of either we go on a very congested roads, very well used roads, and cause traffic chaos, or we go across green space, in this case Bransbury Park. And then what impact does that have? Because not only is Bransbury Park is a place where, again, you know, you'd either have to go down a footpath and a cycle path and then somehow redirect, or you'd have to go over green space, which, as Gerald has said, that is in his ward. So this is a nonsense where we have little say, but we will have to put up with whatever is decided. And then, as Gerald has also said, the Langston Harbour situation, and there are some concerns with when it does go over Langston or under Langston Harbour, they are going to have to trench down very deeply because they can't go through the harbour because it's such a sensitive area. So there's an enormous amount of cost. It does make me wonder why they've decided to come ashore at an island that has 3 connections to the mainland, and why instead they aren't going into somewhere where you just get ashore straight away. Doesn't make any sense to me. So again, this is something where we should just be opposing this. So I support the recommendations to continue to oppose this, and really they should be looking for somewhere else to bring this ashore if they really need to do so.
Okay, thanks colleagues. Are we happy to send this on, to accept it and send it on? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Item 10, deputation from Mr. Joe Brown. Joe, if you'd like to come and join us. So, Jerry, you're very welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
And I think you have your regulation 6 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to waste some of it by saying good luck to Sir Kim Darroch, and maybe we should swap him for Tommy Robinson. It's my deputation today. This deputation is about item 10, which is health and care operating model. Copies of this have been handed to some members, and I've got one for the officer at the end of the meeting, and I've already sent it electronically. This discusses the implementation of an integrated care system to replace the sustainability and transformation plan that came about in 2016, and that's a good idea because it definitely needs better management. At the recent HOSPA meeting, I spoke about the lack of reporting from the STP, the complete inability to link any reporting back to the 10 major projects, and not for the first time either. I noted there was also a private separate briefing by the STP team for members, of which the public were kept unaware and the content of which remains unpublished. Yet that private briefing was relied upon in the meeting by Richard Samuel, the head of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight STP, as a justification for the lack of reporting. So the STP foisted, and I mean that literally, upon Hampshire and Isle of Wight in 2016 had some really ambitious targets and deliverables. In the original plan, which is still extant today, we were promised a saving of over £400 million a year, actually 448, excluding the 15% savings on staff costs, by 2021. And the staff costs were due to be achieved by July 2019, and there's not much of that left. So with the transformation of the STP into the ICS in November, I expect the reporting on the deliverables from 2016 to 2019 will not be completed. So I've created a reporting template, which is the back page on the thing I've given you, which is a really easy fill-in-the-blanks form for them to say against the 10 major projects that they listed, directly taken from their original plan, how are they doing year by year against what they promised? Because at least we want some reporting before they fold it and quietly slip it into the back of the filing cabinet where it will fall away. So before we actually have a move to the ICS, can I please suggest that we request the STP to fill this in, it's not difficult, and to present it and discuss it. And that what we learn from the inability to do those things, we put into the ICS in the future. Really critical learning. So I request the reporting template be completed and used. So why are we doing this? Well, the STP was a really good idea that got hijacked for something else, rather like Universal Credit did. So the idea was to deliver lower NHS costs by doing things better, but I say it has undeliverable objectives and not enough funding. If you look for it online, the only plan you'll find is from November 2016. It's been changed since but not published, so in my book, if it's not published, it doesn't exist, so we are still with the plan that they published then. I do understand that some reporting has been done, but I can't tie any of that reporting back to the plan at all. So by the 29th of June in 2017, 2 core programs had changed title, a new program had been introduced, and by 2019, 3/4 of the projects in this area should have been completed, but we still don't have any status reports. So what savings were actually achieved in 17-18 against the revised plan of £164 million? So the reported workforce savings in 2018 were shown as 12.2 million, and they claimed an achievement of 103%, yet I don't think that 15% of the NHS workforce costs in Hampshire and Isle of Wight is 12.2 million. Really, I don't. So I've included the table below, published them their stuff, and asked them to fill it in. So let's hear where we are with these 10 programmes. The workforce delivers 15% savings for no investment, and that should be done by next week. The Solent Acute Alliance is due to save £165 million a year from next year, but I can't see that happening, and in fact the budgets are going up. So I won't work my way through the entire list of promises made, but I will ask, where are we with the promised outcomes? Can we at least please have some reporting? I just want to know, like last year, when I asked the same question in the same meeting, for each of the 10 major projects in our STP, how far along are we with them? They must have some internal progress reports. Surely you can't do something this big without internal progress reports. Let's have them as a start. At least it gives us something to look at. So core programme 2, new models of integrated care, should have delivered by last year 75% of integrated primary care hubs being operational and national diabetes pathways fully implemented. Well, it's not reported anywhere, so it doesn't exist. And according to the current programme, programme 2 should be completed by this month. And so how are we doing against it?
Jerry, I think you're on 7 minutes.
No, I'm on 5 minutes, 8 seconds.
Excellent, carry on.
How many of the, and I'll take another 10, how many of the 300 bed reduction targets has Core Programme 2 delivered? We don't know. Core Programme 1 says it will reduce demand for and dependency on health and care services. We don't know how that's being done, and on and on and on. We need to see proper reporting against the published objectives, instead of which we get a constantly changing plan with very little reporting, and it's always late. And where reporting is eventually provided, it will be immensely helpful to know if it was one of the STP initiatives that caused the change or something else. So right now the reporting bears a striking resemblance to the Emperor's New Clothes. We need to see some actual reporting. That's it.
Thank you, Jerry. I don't think Dave's going to introduce this. I think this report isn't really about the STP at all, but it was an interesting monologue. And actually, I think I agree with you about almost all of it. And what I think we could probably look at doing, we have to ask David, is a separate report to the Cabinet about how the STP is progressing and its effectiveness, which would be an interesting report to write. Or it might mean that we're asking questions that may be better not asked and might do damage to Portsmouth if asked. But anyway, David, as Chief Executive, do you want to introduce this report? And if you want to comment tangentially on Jerry's deputation, that would be fine.
Certainly. So first of all, perhaps if I just describe the hierarchy of the various layers of health and care across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So the area that Jerry has been talking about in his presentation, as he's described it as the STP, Sustainability and Transportation Programme. That is at the top of that pyramid, and that covers the whole of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. It doesn't actually have any statutory standing at all, but it is a part of the health structure. It does involve local government. In Hampshire, that is a meeting of probably about 36 people in order to get representation across that agenda, of which 4 will be from local government, just to give you some idea of proportionality there. And that is, as Jerry mentioned, that is becoming known as the Integrated Care System, the ICS. And that transition we're seeing at the moment, and that is driven by the NHS. Below that sits the Integrated Care Partnership, which for our area is around Portsmouth and South East Hampshire, so a smaller geography. Below that is the bit that this paper before you today relates to, which in health terms is talked about as place. For us, it is Portsmouth, where we have a city council and a CCG, a clinical commissioning group, that share a common a common boundary, and we have a health and well-being board that also covers that same geography. And below that, we've been working a lot around clusters and localities, and now introduced through health is the concept of primary care networks. They are at populations of around 30 to 50,000. We've been working originally in Portsmouth on 3, north, central, south, but that's now expanding to 5 to try to accommodate this requirement for the primary care networks. I have some significant sympathy for the point that the points that Jerry have been making. I'm very happy to convey that message to the chair of the STP. It is a recurring theme, and I know that not just from Jerry's previous representations, but from dialogue within the STP itself. But for the purposes of today's presentation, it's around what are we doing in Portsmouth, across our city, and particularly working very closely with our GPs, with the clinical commissioning network, and with our hospital, which of course has a bigger catchment area than just the city, and in terms of various voluntary groups that work within that system. So the report sets out what we've been doing since we first developed the blueprint for Portsmouth a few years ago. Since then, we've developed what we've called Health and Care Portsmouth. We've done a huge amount of integration across care and the health agenda. We've got quite a wide range, compared to most places, certainly a very wide range of joint posts across both the CCG and the City Council, and also the CCG with Solent have also got some joint posts now, and there is statutory provision to enable that to happen. And we've set out in the report the achievements that we've achieved through integration. We still think there's a lot more potential there. We've brought this paper to you, particularly to identify 3 areas which we'll be looking for your support on in terms of bringing that integration further and deeper to improve health outcomes for Portsmouth residents. The first is to extend and to consolidate the leadership team. At the moment, we have, at the executive level, we have the Chief Executive of the City Council. There is an accountable officer for the CCG. We're suggesting, amongst other options, that we look at integrating those 2 posts. I think both symbolically and in terms of control and influence, that is really important. There are a couple of other places in the country that have done that, but not many. So we are, at the forefront of this work. One of the other areas you might want to look at is Tameside and Glossop up in the Greater Manchester Combined Authority area, where they've done that. So we've identified 7 different options there. But the option that is being recommended to you by myself and by Dr. Linda Colley, who is the current accountable officer of the CCG, is that we merge those 2 posts in the role of the chief executive. So the chief executive of the City Council will also become the accountable officer. That is a decision ultimately of NHS England. Yeah, so it would be for the CCG to form a view on that. We're doing a lot of consultation with our health partners, both within the city and the surrounding area. But ultimately, it's a NHS England decision. I think we're characterising bringing that together, and we've got a diagram there on page 123 of the agenda, where the City Council, the members represent the local political accountability and engagement. The clinical representation is really important. It's very important that that voice continues to be heard. The CCG is a membership organisation of the GPs across the city, and their relationship with the clinicians within community health and within the hospital system really important. But we're trying to draw that executive bit together and tighter. The second area that we're suggesting that we look at further is delegating more defined decisions and functions to a commissioning committee across health and care for Portsmouth. And the third area is to look to see if we can establish a joint financial role at a very senior level, because we think that that will also unlock greater potential, both in terms of the quality and depth of our integration, but also in terms of our ability to use the Portsmouth pound more effectively. So those are the three areas that we're bringing you today, along with an update in terms of the progress that's been made.
Okay, and I think it's clear that we're doing things very differently in Portsmouth to the rest of Hampshire, where we're trying to integrate really closely with the clinical commissioning group. So the Director of Adult Social Care, the Director of Children's and the Director of Public Health are all shared posts, and that makes us very different to the rest of Hampshire. Matthew.
Thank you, Gerald, and thank you, Jerry, for your deputation. And I'll just have my 2 pennies worth on the STP and ICS. I think Darren put it very well earlier when he was talking about Aquins, that it was an answer looking for a question, and actually I think that's what the creation of the STPs around the country and now the ICSs was. It was the biggest top-down reorganisation in the NHS that no one's ever heard of. And it has, and its transparency and certainly the reporting has been very difficult to the extent of I know myself and my predecessor as cabinet member have found the opaqueness of the reporting from the SDP extremely difficult to deal with, and indeed that has not just been from myself and Luke, but it's also been from other aspects of it on a local level. So and indeed about what they're actually doing. So I think the thing you've got here about the reporting back, I might well send that on and see what we get from that, Jerry. On this, thank you, David, for introducing the report. This is something that I'm really pleased that we're doing. The integration that we're doing with the CCG is fantastic. It's the great thing about it is so often you get organisations butting heads, not working together, finding things difficult to work with. I think it's a real testament to the work that the City Council has done and the CCG has done, that actually we've worked together so well to get to where we are and get to where we want to be. And all of these aspects about bringing functions together, having the single accountable officer, having delegate defined functions and the joint finance roles, having this as a statement of intent really shows us as being putting the people of Portsmouth first. To have a situation whereby the elected members can have more of a say with the CCG, with the doctors, on what goes on in their local GP practices, and the way that the NHS works in the city is really good. It's only a positive, and the fact that at the same time we can have the expertise of our CCG can feed in more into the way that we can do better for our children's services, for our public health services, and also for our adult services is such a positive. So I'm really pleased this report has come forward. It's a testament to all the work our officers do, our clinicians do at the council, and also the people at the CCG, both the doctors and the administration staff there, and it's really good. So I fully endorse the report.
Okay, thank you. Rob, we have one sentence.
Okay. Looking after children and families, obviously the expenditure in children and families, one thing we mustn't forget is demand is increasing out there and the cost of delivering is increased. I think this is very good in being a robust solution to actually tackle that demand. And one of the things I'll just refer to Jerry to is it's not a flat plane. Things change on the site. So one of the things that needs to be accounted when you ask the report is how much did it cost and how much has the demand increased since those figures were put there, because the saving may be in the fact of how you're tackling that demand. And I certainly can relate to that this solution here has been really a robust way of responding to the increased demand in children, so I want to recommend it.
Darren, we have half a sentence.
Firstly, a declaration of interest. Dr. Linda Colley is my GP. That is not a pecuniary interest, but just useful. All I would say is that this is actually an answer to some of the questions Jerry posed earlier on. There are real concerns around achievable targets and people feeling unaccountable, and the fact the STP wasn't statutory only delivers that. I would only suggest to David and to the team that going forwards that we make sure that all the targets that emerge are achievable, and if they're not, then it's a case of who can we sack, which is another good reason to go down this route, and I support the approach, Gerald.
Thanks so much. Colleagues, you happy with this? Yep. Okay, thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to meeting of the Cabinet. I know Cabinet members are remaining in here after this meeting, and we have a group of people who are waiting outside. I think David, Chris, etc. are waiting. But Jane, I think we can probably, as the official meeting has finished, we can turn this off. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for coming.